the Pioneer viewers, we're here with the latest developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. And as you know, the war continues. And the war process, which started with Russia's invasion attempt, continues with intense clashes and attacks. Moscow is now backing down in order to keep its current political positions strong. But we all know that the Russian army has suffered a lot during the war. The Russian army's stocks have been greatly depleted, and the loss of soldiers have also reached high levels. So the Russian people have reacted against the military and against the Putin administration. Many Russian citizens have left their country because of the prolonged war, and the younger generations, especially young men, have fled their country in order not to participate in the Putin's war. Those who could not escape were forced to fight on the front, and the Russian soldiers who are forcibly sent to the front find a way to escape the war. The Russian government executes war deserters through barrier units, so Russian soldiers fleeing the war have to seek refuge. An incredible incident happened the other day. A soldier who escaped from the Russian army was caught within the borders of another country, and it is stated that there has been a great increase in the number of soldiers deserting from the Russian army recently. So, since the first days of the war, there were soldiers fleeing from the war, and the reason for the increase in recent days is that the military conditions are quite bad. It is stated that the soldiers in the Russian army could not withstand the psychological pressure and they fled the war. So, information obtained from the local sources indicates that the army members are under great stress and anxiety. Another problem of Russia is that the war stocks are decreasing day by day. As seen from the open sources, the stocks of the Russian army are dwindling, and it is not easy to replace them. The war continues and the Ukrainian army is reinforcing itself. Compared to the early days of the war, the Ukrainian army's firepower has increased significantly. And now, if you're ready, let's examine the latest escapes of the Russian soldiers and the other developments together. But as a pioneer, we continue to bring you the latest developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. You know that I also read all of your comments on our videos, so please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments and tell us in the comments what content you would like to see on the Pioneer channel. Let's start if you're ready, because the Pioneer reports. The other day, an incredible incident happened in the border again, and border guards caught a man trying to illegally cross from the Belarus into the NATO country of Poland. The interrogation revealed that the fugitive was a 40-year-old Russian soldier who had been fighting in Ukraine, and he was identified as a deserter from the Russian army. Poland, and a strong opponent of Moscow's actions against Ukraine, has been threatened by the Kremlin. Polish authorities took a firm stance against Russia's threats and called on Europe to fight back. For the first time during the war, a Russian soldier was caught trying to cross the Polish border. So, Polish sources said that the man was dressed in plain clothes and unarmed and in the possession of the Russian military documents, including a contract with the army to join the country's ongoing war against Ukraine. So it was not immediately clear whether the Russian soldier's documents were of critical importance, and the captured Russian soldier was handed over to the security forces for the necessary procedures. Local sources reported that last month that many army deserters would normally flee to Kazakhstan, which has close ties with the neighboring Russia, and that the Russians don't need to have an overseas passport to enter the country. But it seems that the Russian deserters are trying to flee to all the countries in the region. Deserters have been a problem for the Russian military throughout the Russian President Vladimir Putin's attempt at full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In November 2022, the UK Ministry of Defense stated that Kremlin generals had approved the use of weapons against deserters. So, a special unit was even set up to execute deserters from the Russian army. This approach is driving Russian soldiers away from the army, and the Russian soldiers shared many videos showing that they did not feel safe. Even though the videos have been widely shared, it is observed that the Moscow administration has not taken any steps. So it is known that the desertion from the Russian army is punishable by 10 years in prison. And in February, the Russian anti-war project called Get Lost, created to help the Russian men escape conscription, said cases of desertion from the Russian army had increased tenfold this year. So Ukraine's military intelligence agency said that last month that thousands of Russian soldiers had deserted from the army, and the troops deployed to fight the war in Russia's southern military district are increasingly deserting their posts, it said. So Ukraine's military intelligence said in a statement that more than 18,000 Russian soldiers from the southern military district had deserted their posts, about 12,000 of them belonging to the 8th Combined Arms Army, and a unit in which the enemy is constantly engaged in hostilities in the eastern Ukraine. About 2,500 soldiers left the Russian 58th Combined Arms Army, he added. The figures showed the number of deserters in the Russian army is on rise. So according to the satellite imagery tracked and cited by experts, about a third of armed combat vehicles used by Russia in its full-scale invasion of Ukraine are no longer in storage. Ukraine's general staff gives the approximate losses of Russian forces equipped and troop losses on a daily basis, and these figures have recently increased after months of intense fighting during an offensive on the Eastern Front and a bid to take the Donetsk city of Kazov Yar. A post published the other day found that 10,389 AF remain in storage and down 4,763 from Russia's pre-war data in 2021, a total decrease of about 32%. Part of the number of weapons in the Russian army consists of old weapons from the Soviet era, and for this reason they don't have fully modern resources, and this is exactly why the number seems high. So there is a noticeable difference in the volume between the Russian army and the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian army starts the war at a disadvantage and continue with an advantage. The strategic operations planned and implemented by the Ukrainian army has been successfully implemented in all areas of the front, and the success of the Ukrainian army caused the Russian army to panic. We will see whether the developments in the coming days will be the beginning of a new process. But now, what do you think about the deserters in the Russian army? And how do you think the communication strategy of the Russian army can be interpreted? And what do you find successful about the Ukrainian army? And how do you interpret the tensions between Poland and Russia? You know that we care about your opinion, so please share it with us.